This presentation is for all you surface preparation warriors out there. We're going to talk about how to unpack and set up an A95 and the DL2000 vacuum that you pair with it. We're going to also do the setup on how to run it once it's out of the packaging. We're going to provide my contact information and National's contact information. If you have additional questions, if you get to the end of the video and you still want to have another touch point, my phone's actually on 24/7, so you guys can call me on weekends, holidays, anytime you're working in. If you have a problem or question that we can help you with at National Flooring Equipment, feel free to reach out to me. So here we go. All right, we're going to start off with the A95. This is what it looks like when it shows up. It's on a pallet and it's banded and it's in a box. So you're going to want to get yourself a pair of good cutters, and we're going to cut the band. That's the first thing we're going to do, is cut this band right here. Be careful, it's sharp and it's tight. There we go. That's first step. The second step, we're going to put our cutters off to the side. We're going to lift this box off. This works really good if you got two people, one person on the other side, but I'm going to manage all by myself just this one time. We're going to pull off this top. We're going to set it to the side. And if you guys can see how this is set in here, I'm going to fold this down. There's some packing that you can go ahead and remove. I'm going to pull this apart just so I can get to it. Normally I try to open this so I can back the shot blaster out. But before I do that, I'm actually going to put the handle into its spots. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your handle, you're going to lift it out, and you definitely want your handle facing backwards the correct way, this way. And there's little pins. These are what your pins look like, guys. This is for your height adjustment. I'm going to go ahead and put a couple pins in. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out a box blade or knife. I'm going to open it up, and I'm actually going to make my own ramp to pull this out. Next, I'm going to reach in, and I'm going to take out my instruction manual, my operator's manual, and my maintenance manual. It's usually comes in a bag that looks like this, guys. Next, I'm going to take out some packing material. I'm just discarding it off to the side. Same thing on this side. I'm going to take out this packing material and discard it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this cord, I'm going to put it on the top. And the reason why is some more packing material we're going to discard. When I cut this ramp with my box blade, I want to make sure that I don't cut my cord. It can't happen. So I've opened up my little trusty box blade, and I'm just going to cut down both sides of this box. Real easy. One side. Now I actually have a ramp. I'm just going to kind of tilt this back. I'm going to use both hands. Just going to roll it right off. And there you have it, guys. Now we're pretty much unpacked, and we're ready to start the setup for operation and using the equipment. So I'm going to push this out of the way, and then we're going to unpack the DL2000 vacuum. I know you have this video to watch, but I highly recommend. It's obviously important that you read your maintenance and your instruction manual before you start using it. This video is just kind of a visual aid, but you should definitely read your manual before you operate any piece of equipment. The next thing we're going to unpack is the DL2000 vacuum. Once again, I'm going to use a box blade to open the carton. And guys, if you're using a box blade, it's always good to use some cut-resistant gloves. Obviously, razor blades are really sharp, so be real careful. We're going to open up our flaps. And I'm going to cut down both sides of this so I can get the vacuum out. Normally, I look inside, make sure that I'm not going to cut any cords or vacuum hoses. I'm just going to pull this apart. And the reason why I looked into the top of the vac, I'm going to want to roll this out with the big wheels first, with the ramp that I actually made when I opened up the side. So if you're not sure, go ahead and take your hoses out before you cut your carton. You're going to get two hoses. One that you're going to attach to the vacuum. That's the larger of the two. And the second is the smaller of the two hoses, which is usually utilized for the floor tool and wand with the vacuum. So I'm going to toss those on the ground. I'm going to go ahead and remove a little bit more bubble wrap packing material. I'm going to take my cord, put it up top, and we're going to roll this right out. So my wheel locks are on. I'm going to take those off. And again, I'm going to take out the operator's manual and the maintenance manual, which you should keep it with your machine at all times. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out this wand that is used for your floor tool. More packing material. Actually, I'm going to set this with the hoses for now. All right, so when you guys get this unpacked, the first thing you should do is make sure with your A95 that you have your A95. You put your handle on with your pins before you take it out of the box. And you're going to look for this plastic bag that you should have taken out. It's going to have your operator's manual and it's going to have your service manual. So this is the parts that come with it that you want to make sure that are included with the machine right off the bat. Once you've unpacked the DL2000, you want to check for quite a few parts that come with it. You want to make sure you have your operator's manual and your maintenance manual. And in this bag, there is actually an adapter plug, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, that is your 20 amp to 15 amp adapter that's included in the bag with your maintenance and your operator's manual. I'm sure I'm going to put this right here. The other thing we're going to check for is your large hose, your small hose, your wand, and your floor tool is actually underneath the vac. And how to access that is, right now this vac is in transport mode. So this is great if you're putting it in the back of your van or however you're moving it. It's more compact, it's less tippy this way. It's a great little feature. But in order to get to some more parts that we're going to look at, and for transport, once we're done transporting on the job, we're going to pull this knob out. We're actually going to lift this up. I don't know if you guys heard that, but this pin locked inside of here, and this has got shocks inside of it, so it actually moves nice and slow so it won't slam down. So I'm going to reach under here. I'm going to take out my floor tool. This is a great accessory for attaching to your wand, cleaning up the floor. And you should have two adapters. You're going to have one straight tube adapter that looks like this. It's going to go in here. And then you also should have a vacuum slide gate interrupter. I don't have one right this second here, but we're going to incorporate it into the video directly. Let's talk about some accessories that you definitely need, that you should order with your shop blaster or should come in your package. This is your 24-inch sweeper magnet. So you roll it across the floor and it picks the shot up. You lift the handle up, it drops the shot into a pile. And then you should have steel shot that actually comes in a 5-gallon bucket. And this hand magnet, you should get one of these because you can pick the shot up and use it to load and unload your shot blaster. A couple of other things that I find real important: gloves, hearing protection. When I was younger, I might have taken hearing protection for granted a little more than I should have, but at my age, I'm smart enough to tell guys you should definitely have hearing protection. And with a shot blaster, I think it's automatic. If you're not a glasses wearer, which I am, you get you a good pair of safety glasses like this. I can't see very well on a job site without my glasses, so I prefer this kind. I use these because they fit right over my glasses. I can adjust how tight they are, and now I'm completely protected from any shot that could possibly escape from the machine. Safety glasses, gloves, hearing protection, it's real important, you guys. A little more setup for your vacuum before we start using it. I'm actually going to remove this plastic off the handle. I'm going to open up my zip ties. All right, so let's talk about setup. Let's start with the A95. First, I showed you guys earlier how to put the pins in to remove it. I'm a real short guy, but I make up for it in width. So I want my handle low, so I can control it like this. I don't want it up here like I'm riding a chopper. I want my handle height real low because this is comfortable for me pushing it along the surface like this. The next guy comes along and he's 6'5". He doesn't want to have to reach or bend over, so he's going to pull these pins out. He's going to adjust the height of his handle up considerably. Make sure you put both pins in. Now, so for a taller guy, this is much more comfortable operating at this height, and it's got multiple adjustments so you can set up for your want. I'm going to get ahead of myself just a little bit while we're talking about the handle. There's some tricks when you go to transport this machine. Right now, it's a little bit wider. If I want to make it a little bit smaller to fit in a little more compact space, I can actually remove the handle and put it in backwards. Put your pins back in. And what I've done now is make it shorter by turning the handle around. I probably wouldn't want to blast it like this because it's backwards and my gauges are upside down, but now it's a shorter space if you have limited space to transport your equipment. All right, for right out of the box, the first things we're going to check is the handle is good, it's locked in, the safe emergency stop's working, the valve's working, and it moves across the floor easily. I'm going to check my shot valve. I always do when I first get it. I'm going to lift up the lid. I'm going to take out the shot screen. So with a new machine, the first thing I do is make sure that's opening and closing completely. Shouldn't be a problem, but I'd always check it. And then I'm going to put my screen back in, just like this. All right, so before we can start operating the equipment, we're going to have to do a couple things. We're going to fill the hopper with shot. And by the way, whenever I'm loading and unloading the machine, not only is it turned off, I currently do not have it plugged in. I'm going to take this hand magnet and I'm going to stick it down into the shot, and this is used shot because we do a lot of demos here. I'm going to squeeze the handle and fill up the hopper. Now you want to fill the hopper up to about the top of the screen. You don't want it any fuller than that because then you won't be able to shut your lid. So we're going to put some shot in here. And let's go back to the screen real quick. I do occasionally get calls where guys say, hey, my screen's not attached. You stopped building it, or you didn't finish building it. That's pretty acute. But the reason why this isn't attached is if you were ever blasting up a surface that had a real thin glue on it, like a residue left after you'd scraped it, it tends to stick to the screen. And in the past, guys would take this entire tray when it was welded all together and they put it in a fire pit or take a torch to burn the glue off of it, and it warps the thicker metal so it won't fit back in there. So guys will take this off and they'll clean it, and that protects this, and then you can just reinsert it. And the purpose of this screen is to keep nuts, bolts, washers, cotter pins, any trash that usually you don't see that comes out of the joints. And you want your slope side facing the handle when you put it in, just like this. So now it's together. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to close our lid, and you want to make sure that these are all the way down and locked. This is your hopper lid closures. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to take this hand magnet we're gonna put some shot on the ground. And the reason why we're gonna do that is, if you guys were to flip your machine over, you would see that you have a side magnet, a front magnet, and then no magnet. That's where your air comes in. This shot actually sticks to this and creates a curtain. That helps maintain the shot inside of the machine and the rebound instead of it flying everywhere. So new out of the box, if I put shot in it, turn it on, it's gonna throw shot everywhere. That's a bad thing, because it teaches the people around you the meaning of stepping and fetching. Because this is really like a small shotgun continuously going off on the floor, so you really don't want that media escaping. So instead of hand loading it, I put a small amount on the ground. And just run the machine over it. See how it's grabbing that shot? Like that? Can you guys see that? That's making that curtain, which is gonna help maintain that shot. So, when I first turned it on, now it's not gonna throw shot all over the place, which is great. So now it's preloaded. So before we operate the A95, we're gonna actually get the DL2000 vacuum set up. This is your Longo pack, and we'll talk a little bit more about that maintenance in a little bit. But what we're gonna do is, we're gonna make sure and pull enough down that there's a little bit of slack so the dust can fall out and rest on the tray. Now we're gonna hook our hose up from the DL2000 to the A95. And remember, you actually get two hoses. So you also get your floor tool and your wand. You're gonna set these up. This would be your wand. I'm just gonna pull this pin and engage that. Now I've got my floor tool and my wand that's utilized with your smaller hose, not with the shot blaster. We'll just set that right there. So this is your larger hose, this is your smaller hose. The smaller hose is for your floor tool and wand for cleaning up. Your larger hose, we're gonna actually use for the shot blaster, so we can get a little more CFM and airflow. So I'm gonna hook up one end to the shot blaster. And because it's been curled up in a box, I'm actually gonna stretch this out and untangle it. And this end we're gonna hook right here to the vacuum. So now I'm gonna plug my machines in. We're gonna talk a little bit about troubleshooting here in a little bit, but let me say right off the bat, your vacuum and shot blaster both combined pull more than 20 amps. So I get a lot of calls over the last 25 years. I keep tripping the breaker. So my first response to that phone call is, oh, is it turning off your vacuum too? Yeah! Well, that tells me that even if you're plugged into different outlets, you're on the same 20 amp breaker. So make sure you plug your vac and your shot blaster into two separate 20 amp breakers. And I normally recommend, if you need to run extension cord, try to run the extension cord on your vacuum because it pulls a lot less amps than your shot blaster. So use the closest outlet for your shot blaster, and if you need to go farther away to get on a different breaker, run cords on your vacuum. So I'm going to plug these in both on separate breakers right now. All right, so let's test the vacuum. So there's my power light. The top light indicates, this orange light, when it lights up, that indicates that the filters are clogged, and I'm actually going to show you guys that. Let's turn on one motor. Now the other motor. I'm going to pull this hose and make the vacuum think that it's clogged. So I'm going to turn on both vacuums, motors, and then I'm going to plug this so you can see that light up. Now we're ready to run the A95. Okay, so before we test blast, I'm going to turn on the vacuum, but I just wanted to go over, you want the machine moving, then you squeeze the small handle closer to the big handle. The more you squeeze the handle, the more amps you're going to draw. So it's important to make sure the machine's moving, then squeeze the handle, and then when you get to the end of your pass, you want to let go of the handle and keep it moving until the blast wheel stops spinning. So let's see how this machine operates right out of the box. I'm going to turn on both my vacuum motors. I'm going to move my machine. So you guys can see we did a quick test patch just to test it. And this is, once you're done with a big area, you're going to take your sweeper magnet, you're going to pick up any shot that's left behind with your handle. There's not a lot left because we just basically did a real small area. You're going to take your hand magnet, pick this up. You can either put it back in your machine or put it back in your bucket. The operation is pretty simple. When you overlap, you want to overlap just inside of your last pattern. You don't want to overlap too much. You don't want to underlap either. You don't want to leave any unprepped area. You'll get an idea. So I put my back wheel just on top of the line that I just blasted. Now I can adjust a little more overlap or a little less, but for you guys that haven't had a lot of experience, put your wheel right over that line and follow it. I also recommend try to start on a joint and move out from there. That'll help you keep straighter lines than just starting out in the middle of the floor, because once you have a kind of zigzag line, you tend to follow that. So try to start on a joint or a wall if you can. So a couple of good tips is as you're blasting throughout the day, every 20 minutes or so, shut the machine off and check to make sure your hopper doesn't need shot added to it. And your vacuum, depending on how soft the concrete is or the material you're taking up, you need to clean your filters every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, maybe every 20 minutes. But you want to definitely make sure you're cleaning it before the light comes on. Your shot blaster works off two basic principles, rebound and vacuum. So if you take either one of those away, your shot blaster is not going to work. How you clean your filter in your vac is you're going to slide your vacuum interrupter, slide closed, and then you're going to pop this. I'm going to actually kind of show you guys that now, and you have to do this while the machine's running with both motors. See the top jumping. You can actually see that top jumping every time I do this. That's shaking, and watch this. Your dust is actually falling down into this Longo pack right now. So what you guys are gonna find is when you unpack your vacuum, you're gonna notice that your plug has a 20 amp plug on it, and some of you guys might not understand what a 20 amp plug is. Nick, if you'll roll that beautiful plug example pictures up, because you probably can't see it from this far away. This is the 20 amp plug that comes on the end of the vacuum and your blaster. This adapter comes with your vacuum. This adapter is a 20 to 15 amp adapter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it in, and now I have a standard traditional 15 amp plug. So if you ran into a house that was built in the 60s or a much older building, you will only find 15 amp plugs that look like this. And obviously, like here, I've had an electrician come in the last few years, and he's put in 20 amp plugs for me, so I can use this without the adapter. What I see a lot of guys do on the job sites is they plug these together, and they tape them together just so they don't get pulled apart and lost. Real important that you understand that. If you guys have any questions on the difference between a 15 and 20 amp plugs and the adapter, you're welcome to reach out to me at any time. You'll figure it out though. If you show up and this won't plug in, that means it's got 15 amp breakers. You definitely need your adapter. Some buildings you'll be lucky and you'll find that they have 20 amp breakers. All right, team, we're going to talk about some quick touch points on the DL2000 about maintenance and troubleshooting. You do have wheel locks, so you can lock this into place to keep it from moving around. That's great if you're in transport mode, you want to lock it to keep it from moving. Also in transport mode, you want to pull this out, set this all the way down, lock it into place. Some other troubleshooting that you guys might find is there's actually a maintenance schedule on the back of the DL2000, and it's going to go over your primary filters, your HEPA filters, your brush motors, your 120 volt motors, your Longo pack gasket, your intake gasket. This is a really helpful quick guide, but the guide won't tell you that if your light comes on and stays on even though you've cleaned it, it's possible that somebody sucked up some moisture and it's got onto the filters and it's ruined the filter, or you've just reached the end of the life of your filter a little bit quicker than what the sticker says. How does that happen? It's a great question. Thanks for asking that. If you blast fiber reinforced concrete, that was really popular for a long time. There's a lot of it out there. Those little fibers stick to the paper pleated filter that's in here, and it tends to clog it up pretty quick. Not so much in garages, but you will find that in a lot of commercial applications still about the country. So you got to watch that, or really heavy glues or glue film can get in there and ruin your filters pretty quickly. We actually offer a couple different filters. A standard paper filter, which has got good life to it, but the guys that do moisture remediation on a daily basis are fighting a lot of moisture coming through the slab. So we offer a Teflon coated filter that can actually be washed and dried and put back in there. So the guys usually have a couple. One gets clogged from the moisture coming out of the slab. They'll pop a new one in, wash the Teflon coated filter with a soft brush and some real mild soap, let it dry, and they can keep changing back and forth until they've used up the life of the filter. For most guys though, just a regular paper filter, you'll get your life and your money's worth out of it. So obviously to replace that, you're just gonna pop these open. You're gonna lift your top off, and there's 6 10mm screws. You just unscrew those and you lift out your filter. It's a big cone shaped filter, and bag it up, throw it away, put a new one in there, replace your screws. And your HEPA filter kind of looks like an old air cleaner off of like an old Chevy 350. It's just a big round HEPA filter. It's actually attached to the top. It's really easy to change as well. Typically your HEPA filter life is quite long, especially if you're keeping your filters clean and doing the right kind of maintenance. Other than that, changing your Longo pack, which we're going to show you, we're actually going to provide a link to how to change your Longo pack because we've got a video of that for you guys to reference. But like I keep saying, if you guys have questions, my name is Dave Bigham. You guys can reach out to me. My phone's always on. So if you guys have questions when you go to do maintenance, or if you get out to the job and you're on a job and you have questions, feel free to give me a call. National is we take a lot of pride in the service after the sale. We appreciate the fact that you guys have bought equipment, but we want it to work and work right for you. So don't be afraid to reach out and let us help you. We're going to do a quick troubleshooting, and I'm going to base this off of the phone calls that I get. The first one is the emergency stop is depressed and it won't start because you have to actually pull up on it. Then it'll light up. I have it unplugged because we're going to talk about maintenance and we're going to open doors and tip it back so it's unplugged, but make sure that that is pulled all the way up. The next thing we're going to talk about on troubleshooting is I keep tripping the breaker. This machine has a shot valve that controls the amount of media that's fed to the blast wheel. The more media that you feed to it, the more amps it pulls. So you actually have a amp meter that's lit up right on this machine. So if I'm squeezing the small handle all the way up to the big handle and I'm blasting along and it says 23 amps, after a few minutes the breaker's going to heat up and it's going to start to trip. And then once it gets hot, it's going to just keep tripping. So you want to keep this at really 17 amps. And guys are like, well, why do I want it 17 amps when it's a 20 amp breaker? Because as the shot gets smaller, as it impacts and the 330 shot gets a little bit smaller and smaller, it feeds more shot through it, and it actually can increase the amount of amps that it's pulling over the life of the shot that's in there, because shot is a consumable, but it continues to recycle until it disappears into dust. So we're going to talk about how to adjust the shot valve to stay at 17 amps. If the cable stretches or during transportation somebody pulls on this cable, it can make it out of adjustment where it's either not blasting enough amps or too many. Another troubleshooting, we talked earlier in this video on how to preload your magnets. Guys will turn it on and they'll forget to do that. And it's not new, but their guys have run it in and out of a job site with real rough surfaces, and it's drug the shot off the magnets, and it's throwing shot in this, basically like this, all over. That's a big deal. So make sure that you preload your magnets before you use it. My machine's dropping shot. That's usually because a guy is starting on a big pile of shot that's already on the ground, which will cause the machine to drop all the shot that's in the hopper. This A95 works off two basic principles, rebound and vacuum. So if I put a bunch of shot on the floor and try to start the machine on it, the shot being propelled down hits the shot on the ground, it absorbs the kinetic energy, and basically it doesn't rebound back up into the hopper. So you want to make sure your surface is nice and clean. There are some things that a shot blaster of any size won't do, and that would include really thick soft glue, because the machine actually hits the glue and loses its kinetic energy, and once again it won't work. Now if you've re-scraped it, like this floor actually has glue on it, but it's just real light film and it's dried up, so it would work just fine. But if you want to flip the camera and show some of that glue that's on the outside of that carpet, if you guys try to blast up this kind of glue, the shot blaster will not work. So to adjust the shot valve, what you're going to do is to adjust how much it opens or closes, if you needed to do that, to adjust the amps. I usually put a pair of vice grips on the end of this cable, loosen up this little nut, and if you pull more tension, it's going to open more. If you let it slide backwards a little bit and then tighten it up, it's going to open less. And normally I take a little black marker and I mark on that cable so I can see how much I've moved it visually before I tighten it up. We're going to talk about one more thing while we're down here. This ring right here is called your control cage, and what that does is has a leading edge and a trailing edge on the opening of that control cage. That does not move, but the blast wheel moves around it. What that control cage does and what that opening does is determines where the shot hits on the blast wheel. So how you adjust your control cage is, we've made a blast pattern here, and it's real even, you can see that. But what you want to do is you want to stand in front of the machine like someone's blasting towards you, and if you don't move they're going to run you over. If it's blasting heavy on the left side, you want to turn that control cage counterclockwise towards your left foot. If it's blasting heavy on the right side of your pattern, standing in front of the machine as someone's blasting, pushing it towards you, you want to turn that control cage clockwise towards your right foot. All right, so to adjust your control cage, what we're going to do is we're going to loosen up these control cage clamps right here. I'm going to use a 13 millimeter. The rest of the world is going to use an adjustable wrench, but I happen to have the right tool for the job. I'm going to go ahead and loosen this. I'm going to take this nylock nut all the way off, which isn't really necessary, but for visual purposes I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to take this clamp and the small washer off. If you guys can see in here on your control cage, there is a notch there and a notch there. So inside of the machine, this is the blast wheel, which is moving, and the control cage is sitting still. This is what it looks like if I took it out. Can you guys see those two notches? You actually can see those on the outside of the machine. So I've marked them because my pattern's pretty good, so I know how much I've moved it. I can actually take a screwdriver. If I loosen up the other side, I can move this up or down to adjust the pattern on the floor. So the way it's sitting, if it was blasting heavy on this side, I'd turn it counterclockwise toward my left foot standing in front of it. I would move these 2 notches on the clock face up a little bit to the right side, or my right foot standing in front of it if it was blasting heavy on that side. So always turn it toward the hot side. So that's the adjustment that escapes most people. Right out of the box, this one was set perfect. So I went ahead and took a black marker and marked both of them. And if you guys look, this is set about 8 and 10 o'clock on the clock face. If you were thinking of this, if you're thinking of this as a clock face, the bottom notch is set at about 8 and the top is set about 10. So I can rotate this a little bit down or a little bit up to even out my pattern depending on which direction I need to go. When we're talking about maintenance with the shot blaster, I get a couple of questions that I'd like to answer in advance for you guys. One is, how long is your blast wheel going to last? On average, your blast wheel is going to last 30 to 50 hours. This is what a new blast wheel looks like, and what wears is the actual blade itself. And what you guys, I have this blast wheel out of an older, larger machine. You can see where it's cut a river kind of through the blade. So what happens is the whole blade doesn't go away, but the shot will actually cut a river all the way through it and cut it in half. What I tell everybody is when 3/4 of this blade thickness is worn a river through, it's time to change it. Because if that cuts all the way through, your blast wheel actually will come apart. And you don't want that to happen. It makes quite the noise and creates quite the fuss. So keep an eye on it. When it's about 3/4 of the way worn through, when that river is worn through like this one's probably got a little bit more life on it because it's not cut 3/4 of the way through. I'd say 3/4 is probably down here on this machine. But this is a used wheel, so at least you guys can kind of see the river that I'm talking about, that it cuts it through. You can see it a little bit more inside of the control cage. I don't know if you guys can see the wear inside of there, right there. So the control cage sits on the outside, and these are your impellers. So this piece of the blast wheel, it's also turning with the blast wheel. It churns the shot up and throws it out the control cage opening onto the blades. Let's talk a little bit more about your wear parts inside of the machine. These are your side liners and your top liner. They actually fit up inside of your machine. They protect the housing of your machine. These are considered your side liners. A lot of us in the industry call them hatchet liners because they look like hatchets. There's a left and a right, and then there's your top liner that's always frowning. So how can you tell if these are worn out? Well, the shot actually hits the flat surface and wears it out. So I have a couple of great examples of what not to do that I got from a friend of mine that's been in the industry forever. This is a set of side liners on a very large unit that they have not changed in time. And if you guys can see that V right there at the top, the liner's completely gone. So that means the shot was probably eating away at their housing. This one is, they've actually welded on it probably to try to get through the job, but they've almost cut this completely in half. So this is, you want to change it when it looks more like this, and you don't want to wait till it cuts all the way through like that right there did. So this is what they look like new on a smaller version. This is an extremely worn set. Just kind of give you a visual to see how it's going to wear. Typically a set of your liners, your side liners and your top liners should last 300 to 400 hours before you have to replace them. Your blast wheel's a little bit more often at 30 to 50 hours, but your A95 actually has a hour meter so you can keep track of your maintenance. A wicked awesome feature that National Flooring Equipment's engineering department has incorporated into the A95 is an hour meter. I've never seen this in all of my years. You just have to kind of keep an eye on your blast wheel and your liners. You never really know when to do maintenance. This really gives you a great indication. If you keep an eye on your hour meter, you know when to do the maintenance on your blast wheel and your side liners and your top liner. So this is a super great feature to have. Utilize this to your benefit. We're going to discuss another point for troubleshooting, and that would be your rear axles of the machine. It has two nuts that hold it in place. And what I have witnessed over the years is This machine weighs a little over 100 pounds. And what guys do is they think they're big and strong, so they lift it out of their truck by themselves. They don't use a ramp or a hoist or anything. And what they do is, I'm actually gonna show you, is they lift it out of the machine. They lift the machine out of the back of the truck, and when they set it down, they set it like that every single time. On one wheel, not on both. Well, what can happen is that rear axle can actually shift. That makes your machine sit at an angle. That makes it throw a shot out one side or drag on one side. That makes it hard to push. So I'm going to show you guys how to make an adjustment in case that happens. I didn't drop it that hard, so I could see that it's moving across the surface nice and evenly, and it's not dragging. So I know it's set right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to actually flip the machine all the way over. This is the same on both sides. So what I normally do is I make a mark. If I have to adjust it, I can see which way I need to move one side or the other. Or if I'm on a real rough surface and I need to bring the blast wheel up off the ground a little bit, I can loosen up both of these nylocks on both sides, and I make a mark on both sides. So I can loosen those up and tap this down, which raises the machine up. So I also can tell now too, now that I've made this mark, how much I've moved it if it's become unadjusted from somebody dropping it on one wheel. So to check your blast wheel and your liners, you want to make sure obviously your machine's unplugged. I've tipped my machine all the way over just for the video. Most guys just lean it back, but you can actually see this blast wheel, so you can see the wear on the blades right there. I can also see my side liner and my top liner if I shine my light up in there. It's a great way to inspect. Now remember, because of the way this shot blaster is designed, this is called a centrifugal blast wheel. That means it spins in one direction like a boat prop. So you're always going to have one liner that's going to wear more than the other. That we call that the hot side liner, which is fine, but it's like doing brakes on a car. When that hot side liner wears, you need to go ahead and replace both of them and your top liner all at the same time. So your A95 shot blaster actually has 4 brushes. You have a rear brush, 2 side brushes, and a front brush. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but these are notched. These aluminum brush holders that hold the brushes are notched. So as these wear, if you needed to, you could actually loosen up these Allen bolts and push them down. Also, we talked a little bit earlier about adjusting the rear axle down, which raises the machine actually up. If I did that, I would probably want to go ahead and loosen up those brushes and adjust them so they're just barely touching the ground. This is just a great tip for you guys when you're done with a job. What I always do is make sure the machine's unplugged, and I'm going to tip it back. And what I like to do is I like to remove the shot from the magnets, because as you go across door jams or high spots in the concrete, unloading in your truck or trailer, I take all the shot out of the hopper first with a magnet, and then the last thing I do is I take a hotel credit card or a 5-in-1 tool or my wife's credit card. Shh, don't tell her, because it demagnetizes it. It saves me a ton of money. So what I'm going to do is I save these old hotel plastic cards. You can use a 5-in-1 tool. Use anything except for your fingers. And why not do this? Because this is magnetic, and you guys will pull nails, screws, cotter pins, and razor blades out of joints, and it'll stick to those magnets. And when you go like this, it'll cut your finger to the bone. I've actually done that. That's why I like to give this advice. So the reason why I'm taking this shut off is now when I go in the trailer or the truck at the end of the job or anywhere that I'm going, I'm not going to leave big piles of shot everywhere, because these magnets are going to be pretty clean. They don't have to be perfect, but I'm less likely to leave piles of shot for somebody to slip on. Just like this. You guys see how well that works? Now I'm ready to transport it. Without all that shot out from underneath it, it's not going to leave piles as I go from A to B. That's also why at the beginning of the next job, you're going to want to reload your magnets with clean shot. Another great reason to do this is if there is any screws or cotter pins or nails or razor blades, now we can go ahead and take them out of the shot before we use our magnets to put it back in the bucket. So on the next job, we don't have foreign material running through our machine. We offer a Shot Blaster concrete performance guide, but you can reference this and it kind of gives you an idea with your hour meter how long your parts are going to last in different applications. So if you guys have more detailed technical questions, feel free to reach out to me. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I encourage you to reach out with any additional questions in the future. Good luck out there surface prepping. Have a great one.